The money that is spent on political campaigns. And as you will be well aware, on Monday, Winston Peters was in here kind of crowing because a court case that he said he had nothing to do with had failed, which meant that New Zealand First is back on the campaign trail. That court case involved questions over $750,000 worth of donations made by people who had appeared from the evidence, thought they were giving it to the New Zealand First Party, but were in fact giving it to a foundation, which Mr. Peters has nothing to do with, that passed money on for the purposes of New Zealand First Party running an election campaign. Well, the case brought by the Serious Fraud Office failed. And the defendants involved, who had permanent name suppression, that was a Freudian slip, live to raise funds another day. Meantime, we have another case now involving possible irregularity, involving the National Party and the Labour Party and some donors of Asian descent and Jamie Lee Ross. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. That case is currently before the courts. But what it all highlights is you could drive a big black New Zealand First campaign bus through our electoral laws when it comes to fundraising. And part of me says, so what? People want to throw money through all sorts of dodgy things at political campaigns. That's kind of their business. Or do we need to really have a decent look at our electoral law? Well, someone I know takes a huge interest in this is constitutional lawyer Graeme Edgeler. And Graeme has been following all these cases and indeed this issue for quite some time. So he joins us on the line now. Graeme, welcome to the platform. Lovely to have you with us.
Thank you for finally having me on.
Graeme, look, first that New Zealand First Foundation case, which of course had nothing to do with New Zealand First or Winston Peters, that was a complete failure in terms of the prosecution, wasn't it?
It was an acquittal, certainly. Criminal cases are always hard. You got to prove things beyond reasonable doubt, and that's not easy. I think we got to, the Serious Fraud Office went into this trying to get a conviction and they didn't get one. So, definitionally, that's a failure. Yeah. I think we got some important information out of it, and the judgment, with its interpretation of here's what counts as a party donation, is something I didn't know.
Yeah.
And something I think we're going to have to look at.
Okay, so what was, if you like, the definition that the judgment gave us, and what might be right or wrong about that definition?
Well, the judge found a lot of things about the New Zealand First Foundation. He found that the people, or at least a lot of the people who donated money to the New Zealand First Foundation, thought they were donating money to New Zealand First. They weren't. But, they thought they were. Judge also found, for example, that the fundraising letters, which were sent by, among other people, MPs for New Zealand First, who don't have name suppression, I won't name one now, in case I get the wrong one, but were sent by New Zealand First asking for donations for the foundation. So it was the party was raising money and directing it to the foundation. So people were making those donations. Then, when the foundation got the money, all the money was applied to the benefit of New Zealand First. So you and me look at that and we think, that sounds like a donation to New Zealand First. The judge said no. Even though the two people involved here could be said to be involved in the administration of the New Zealand First Party, they were wearing a different hat when they received this money. They were trustees of a foundation. And because of that, these were not donations to the New Zealand First Party, even though in many cases the MPs and members of the New Zealand First Party might have known who was going to donate the money. So they could be grateful for it in the ways that parties might be grateful for people donating money. And then, not a party donation.
Graeme, so what I'm kind of hearing is donors were wanting to donate to the political success of New Zealand First. Whilst it wasn't as clear, it was somewhat more opaque than might be in an ideal world, that was where their money ended up in the end, right?
Yes.
So where's the victim in this crime?
The victim is, well, the allegation of victim, and there was an acquittal, and so was there a crime? Turns out not. That the party secretary, whom everyone kept in the dark, was the allegation. The party secretary has a legal obligation. Tell us, if someone makes a really big donation to a political party, which is, $15,000 isn't enough, it'd be more than $15,000. If someone makes one of the donations to a political party secretary has to be told, and the party secretary tells the rest of us. So, we can take account. Or when a vote comes on a certain piece of legislation 6 months later, it's like, why are you voting this way?
You got a big donation.
Some money here, and you can ask questions. And so it's the problem. It was sort of, the allegation was to the party secretary, but really the public. Who, electoral law says if these sorts of donations are made to a political party, and the judge says, no, these weren't donations to a political party, they kind of look like it to me, but no, the law doesn't say they are. Okay. We didn't get to find out, and that's who was hidden. And you could call it fraud. You could have called it, some electoral law breach. You use this. You get a hammer, you hit a nail. You get the serious fraud office. They call it fraud. It's what they used to.
Do you think it was the intent of those who have developed our electoral law over time to create a system where what the New Zealand First Foundation did would be legal and would be possible?
No. I thought there were a couple of, years ago, if you remember the Waitemata Trust and the way they used to do things, which were clearly allowed, those sorts of things, those were loopholes and they were deliberate and people knew about it and the people who wrote the laws knew about it. I thought we'd gotten rid of all the big ones. I knew a few small ones, donations to parties which haven't registered yet. That's I think, a little hole. You're about to register, you're getting $10 million donations, you don't have to tell us anything. 1 week after you register, you get a $15,000 donation. You have to tell us. But this one I did not think was a loophole. I thought we had covered this off. Pay money to someone involved in the administration of the affairs of a political party counts as a party donation. Nope, not if they're wearing a different hat.
Okay.
So,
So that suggests, in that regard, we do need electoral law reform. I
think so.
All right.
The government introduced a bill last week to try and fix up some of these things, reducing the threshold from the 15,000 to 5,000, which, to be honest, still sounds like an awful lot of money to me.
Yeah, but you can still get round it. On the judgment we've had in New Zealand First, you can still get round that limit.
Exactly. So if the government wants to actually ensure that its legislation actually increases disclosure, it's going to have to fix up this little bit as well.
All right. Now, Graeme, what about the case that's just beginning involving these donors, Jamie Lee Ross, National and Labour? Is that the same point? Is that the same issue at law? Or is this case different? These cases different?
It's before the court, so I probably shouldn't get into too much of the details. And I have previously been a lawyer for one of the people here, so I'm going to try to avoid saying very much.
That's fine.
It's a different point because in this case, and publicly known, the party secretaries received the money. The allegation is the source of the money was hidden from them, but the parties knew these were party donations. They just thought they were below the limit. That's $10,000. Oh, look, we got 5 donations. I can't remember what it was. Labour was, I think, we got 5 donations of $10,000.
Yeah.
And the allegation is no. You got one donation of $50,000 and that person had $10,000 to 4 people and they all sent it through.
Yeah. All right. Okay, you can't talk about that case, and I'm just going to accept that. I don't want to do. I do not
very much happened.
I do not want to do you out of a job, Graeme. Do you feel? And as I said, I was at a sort of lobbying a cookie push last night. Winston Peters was there, Shane Jones was there, a whole lot of people from New Zealand First. No one was treating them like lepers or criminals. It seems to me there's not a huge appetite within the body politic, within the Beltway, to do much with campaign donation laws or anything else. Everyone seems quite happy with the way things are.
I don't know. The government has introduced legislation just last week, haven't even had the first reading vote on it yet, to lower the thresholds, to cut off some of the other sort of, not really loopholes, but no, actually we're just going to increase and let people know more. And so I suspect at least 3 parties in Parliament are going to be voting for it. At least first reading, maybe even National will be voting for the first reading. I don't know. So I think there's some appetite for something. There's a question of, do we fix this now before the election, or do we write off this election, possibly find out nothing about the money at all, and fix it after? I think there's some appetite for it.
Yeah.
And of course, I think the government probably still wants, you're talking about public monies before, they've created a little panel to look at things like public funding and the voting age and the threshold and all sorts of little things. It's just there's their appetite for that. They just don't want to do it before the election, it seems.
Graeme, the other thing, I guess, is we are a small country, whilst we're growing slowly. We are a small country. You can't get away with much in New Zealand without someone knowing someone who knows someone. Are we that corrupt when it comes to campaign financing? Do we have that much to worry about? Or does the good old rumour mill and someone telling two friends and they tell two friends, it seems to me that in an informal way means it's very hard to get away with any real skullduggery in this country.
Maybe. I suspect, one of the issues, we should have, the Electoral Commission or the auditors of political parties or whatever, should we have to rely on, if someone is breaking the law, even whether you think the law should be that or not, if someone's breaking the law, should it rely on someone going to a journalist with a bunch of documents from inside the party? Should it rely on someone driving 100 kilometres down the middle of the country and holding a press statement outside the Wellington Central Police Station? There have been fundamentally three trials. This one's a sort of a double up. 3 trials about election law stuff. None of them were found by the authorities. All of them were found by people effectively leaking or, And it's that, should we have to rely on it? Shouldn't we have an electoral commission that can audit things to make sure? No.
But I don't like a bureaucracy interfering in people's right to association and right to vote. And I'd say also, if anyone has been defrauded by what New Zealand First did, and as we must say, the courts found no one had, surely it is, and it seems to me these mechanisms, and there have been claims about such mechanisms for many years and through many electoral cycles about New Zealand First, these mechanisms are designed to get rid of the messiness of democracy when deciding what to do with campaign funds. It's always seemed to me that this has been a small cabal inside New Zealand First saying the messiness of having committee meetings, deciding what we do with the money we've given is just too difficult for a small party. We want to have a way of spending that money as the inner circle want to spend it. And it's really only the democracy of New Zealand First itself that is damaged by these practices.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's true. The party, parties can have very sort of, I'm pretty sure that almost all the spending of, say, the Conservative Party, back when Colin Craig was running it, was Colin Craig.
Yeah.
A party can set up, for deciding on what money's being spent, a party can do what it wants. It can spend the money pretty widely. There isn't very much,
But let's be honest, New Zealand First isn't really a political party, it's more a cult of personality, isn't it?
There are people who disagree, but it's certainly Winston Peters looms large in the history of New Zealand First.
Yeah. Well, Graeme, I don't think we're going to get much change, but it is always good to dream, isn't it?
If we didn't have dreams, what would we have?
Good on you, Graeme. Lovely talking to you. Graeme Edgeler, constitutional lawyer. And we'll watch that, of course, the Labour National Jamie Lee Ross case as well. I kind of suspect it might have as much success as the case the SFO brought against New Zealand First.